Hi everyone, it's JG here with Earth-5D University, back for another teaching. Happy Mother's Day, guys. This is a timeless teaching, but it happens to be Mother's Day 2021. I'm so glad you're here, guys. I'm going to talk today about mothers, of course, about women, and I'm excited to get right into it today. Nikola Tesla has been really popular in the mainstream ever since Elon Musk brought us a new version of the electric car, right? He brought us the Tesla. So Nikola Tesla had a lot of forward-thinking ideas that I'd like to talk about today when we're talking about through the lens of even women. He did a very fascinating presentation. Actually, it was an interview with Collier's magazine in January of 1926. So very soon that is going to be 100 years. And he had some really fascinating predictions about what would be going on in our world 100 years from now. And of course, it's amazing, right? It's absolutely amazing how accurate he was, how true that his predictions have become. So I'm hoping to get into that today and read you some of his predictions for 2026. Now to set that up, I'm just going to kind of formulate some of my own thoughts about it, about where women are and where the divine feminine has been and where it's going. So I talk about it often lately, how in antiquity, about 3,000 years ago, feminine energy started to dissipate from the planet. And it's not that it did it overnight, right? It's been a slow bleed of energy. It's been a slow dissipation in feminine energy over time. And as a result, nowadays, women have sort of become men. And a lot of the gifts that women had have been sort of demonized, or they've been pushed under the carpet. So when I think of a strong female, I literally feel like women are very strong physically, like women are extremely strong physically. And this whole view of women as like a little flower is not an accurate representation of the way women were created to be. Women are made to have babies, so like we have to carry a lot of extra weight, a lot of extra energy, even just having a menstrual cycle. Right? It takes so much energy you could actually create a human every month. You have the opportunity to create an actual human being every month, right? It takes a tremendous amount of energy. So women have all sorts of energy that's different than men. But in order for women to survive, I've noticed there's several things that have happened. One, women have sort of had to mimic men in order to get the type of jobs we needed to be able to sustain ourselves. So we had to sort of join the man's world, and I actually did that myself by entering the advertising world and being in corporate America, climbing the old corporate ladder, right? So we also see that in academia too, right? And that's a real thing, is women also climbing the academic ladder, so to speak. So it's everywhere, right? It's everywhere. So women have had to, number one, mimic men, and number two, a lot of our skill set and what we bring to the table energetically, what we would consider as female gift, has been sort of darkened, like intuition. And even what I do with the tarot card readings, it was really difficult for me to go to like a corporate consulting marketing job to having a tarot channel, just because of and just using my spiritual gifts, just because of all the judgment, right, that society has, that stuff is like ridiculous nonsense, right? And that anything that is energetic, anything that is past the five senses, is just like a fortune teller, a gypsy, someone who's going to scam you. And sadly, so all these legit gifts that both men and women have been sort of darkened because no one could talk about them anymore. It wasn't acceptable to use these gifts. Now, it's been a slow bleed right over time. Prior to the 3,000 years, the other roughly 200,000 years of human beings having life on Earth, women had a huge role, not only as leaders, I mean, the gods, right, that we hear in Sumerian mythology, the gods that we hear about in the old quote-unquote myths, some of the most ancient texts, cuneiform texts that we can get a hold of, because these texts weren't written in paper. They were actually baked and built into clay tablets. So they withstood the great cataclysms that, you know, our Earth suffered. If there was some kind of devastation to the Earth right now, any kind of digital file, any kind of paper file would go away, right? I think we need to bake our stories into clay and to somehow preserve them if there is other global cataclysms, so we can once in human history not have to relearn what has been swept under the carpet. So after every devastation, we have to relearn our whole human history. And right now, no one really understands our human history. And so when we're talking about what female gifts are, what it means to be a female leader, we're pulling that energy from a place where it hasn't really been existing on this earth. So when we have these discussions, it's very introductory. It's just the beginning of the divine feminine waking up on earth, right? So divine feminine gifts have either been transmuted to try and be man, or darkened and hidden so that we don't get in trouble, like the Salem witch trials. And so people who use their gifts aren't going to be executed or punished. So that all that stuff is very real. We all remember these things. It's built into our DNA. It's built into our consciousness. Okay, so that's the setup. But Nikola Tesla offers us a really valuable perspective about how he sees things going in the year 2026, which is coming up, right? It's merely 5 years away. And I'm going to read it to you. His prediction. I'll read you a little setup too about what he predicted in general. This is only portions of this article. I will absolutely link the article down below in this description box. Okay, so check it out. So I'll set it up with a little bit of what he was saying about the world in general in 2026, and then I'll read you the female part. Now the female part, he's sort of liking what females are going to be, the role of females on the planet in the future in 2026, and he's liking it to a beehive. So he's using a metaphor. So keep in mind that he's talking metaphorically. Give me a moment, guys. Ready? Okay. So when wireless is perfectly applied, the whole Earth will be converted into a huge brain. Nikola Tesla's words, which in fact it is, all things being particles of a real and rhythmic whole. We shall be able to communicate with one another instantly, irrespective of distance, right? The internet, folks. Not only this, but through television, we will see and hear one another as perfectly as if we were face to face. Crazy, huh? Despite intervening distances of thousands and thousands of miles, and the instruments through which we shall be able to do this will be amazingly simple compared with our present telephone. A man will be able to carry one in his vest pocket, right? Little cell phones. So, okay, so that's just a little setup, and that's what he's seeing things going technologically. So he talks about a couple very important topics, which you'll find in the magazine. I encourage you to read it yourself. Mr. Tesla regards the emergence of woman as one of the most profound portents of the future. It is clear to any trained observer, he says, and even to the sociologically untrained, that a new attitude towards sex discrimination has come over the world through the centuries, receiving an abrupt stimulus just before and after the World War. The struggle of the human female towards sex equality will end in a new sex order, with the female as superior. The modern woman who anticipates in merely superficial phenomena the advancement of her sex is but a surface symptom of something deeper and more potent fermenting in the bosom of the race. It is not in the shallow physical imitation of men that women will first assert their equality and later their superiority, but in the awakening of the intellect of the woman. Through countless generations, from the very beginning, the social subservience of women resulted naturally in the partial atrophy, or at least the heredity suspension of mental qualities, which we now know the female sex to be endowed with no less than men. But the female mind has demonstrated a capacity for all the mental acquirements and achievements of men. And as generations ensue, that capacity will be expanded. The average woman will be as well educated as the average man, and then better educated. For the dormant faculties of her brain will be stimulated to an activity that will be all the more intense and powerful because of centuries of repose. The acquisition of new fields of endeavor by women, their gradual usurpation of leadership, will dull the finally dissipate feminine sensibilities, will choke the maternal instinct so that marriage and motherhood may become abhorrent. And human civilization draw closer and closer to the perfect civilization of the bee. And this is where we get into the bee. Remember, it's metaphorical. The significance of this lies in the principle dominating the economy of the bee, the most highly organized, intelligently coordinated system of any form of non-rational animal life. The all-governing supremacy of the instinct for immortality, which makes divinity out of motherhood. The center of all bee life is the queen. She dominates the hive not through hereditary right, for any egg may be hatched into a reigning queen, but because she is the womb of the insect race. There are the vast desexualization armies of workers whose sole aim and happiness in life is hard work. Then there are the virgin bees, the princess bees, the females which are selected from the eggs of the queen when they are hatched and preserved in case an unfruitful queen should bring disappointment to the hive. And there are the male bees, few in number, unclean of habit, tolerated only because they are necessary to mate with the queen. Then the time is ripe for the queen to take her nuptial flight. The male bees are drilled and regimented. The queen passes the drones which guard the gate of the hive. Strongest of all the inhabitants of the hive, more powerful than any of her subjects, the queen launches into the air. Spiraling upward and upward, the male bees follow. Some of her pursuers weaken and fall. They fail and they drop out of the nuptial chase. But the queen wings higher and higher until the point is reached in the far ether. But one of the male bees remains. By the inflexible law of natural selection, he is the strongest. And he mates with the queen. At that moment of marriage, his body splits asunder and he perishes. The queen returns to the hive, impregnated, carrying with her tens of thousands of eggs, a future city of bees, and then begins the cycle of reproduction. He goes ahead and draws parallels that you guys can dig into if you care to read further. But basically in the state of Wisconsin, he's saying that in 1926, they were already starting to do pro-female laws, statutes. And he specifically calls out that men who are charged with rape were being castrated. All right, guys, so the image of the mother is changing. And I'm not saying that men don't take this the wrong way. I don't see it quite like he does. This was 100 years ago. Men are obviously needed, and male and female energies are needed together to balance us out, right? So this isn't to make men go extinct. And this isn't about having some utopian society of women, queen domination, because that would be like the other extreme of this, right? We don't want that, but we're looking for balance. And so he is predicting this rebirth, and there may be a swinging in the direction of the divine feminine necessary to inject enough feminine energy to make the earth a better place, to make it heal. So my call to you today is to investigate how you see yourself. Do you see yourself as a reigning queen? Can you see that? This isn't about the dark feminine. This isn't about hiding your gifts. This isn't about faking your gifts. You cannot fake it. You cannot do all the spiritual things and not be linked to spirit, because that's not going to get you where you need to go. You cannot fake ascension. The energy has to be there. So I ask men and women to consider the divine feminine within themselves and how they can call that forward to love the earth. This is not ego-driven. This is about kindness, bottom line. This is about kindness and generosity to the earth, to all of its people, including you. Happy Mother's Day. You are queens. Much love and light, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.